There. I have started our recording, and I want to welcome you. And I also want to welcome all of our participants. So this is our second teleconference, and I am Marilee Orsini, and I am president of the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass. And we are having a conversation tonight with Dr. Philip Kotler. And Dr. Kotler, I love it that I have quotes around a legend in marketing, which you definitely are. So I so appreciate your agreeing to talk with us today.
Happy to do that.
Good. I think everyone pretty much knows who you are, but you've written over 60 books in marketing, and I guess are pretty much literally considered a legend in marketing, but you're also an avid glass collector, and recently donated your collection to the Ringling Museum, to the Kotler Covell Pavilion. So I just want to thank you for everything you've done in glass, and also for agreeing to participate with us tonight. You know, this is really to get your insights into, as an organization for AACG. I had 3 questions, but and I'm going to just start with you answering those if you'd like to. The communication, how do we best use communication and marketing, in your opinion, to achieve our mission, which is to further the development and appreciation of art made from glass?
Well, we are trying to get to those people who are glass collectors and who care about the future of glass to contact others who might be interested in collecting glass and getting them to be members of an association, AACG, which is more than just people interested in furthering glass. I've always seen the association as a wonderful society that is worldwide in a sense. Even though this is the American unit, I know that as a glass collector, I have met wonderful people who I would never have met except for sharing this interest in glass. And in order to communicate more about the glass movement, we need more things published about it. I would say that we have to break this down into what role can members or existing members of the board, and also the 600 members who are members of AACG, what they can do, and then what can the galleries do, what can the museums do. And for example, the galleries have been very happy to help us by telling members, people who buy glass, come in for the first time, about the AACG. Maybe even in some cases turning over names so that we can further communicate with the addresses of these people that we receive from the galleries. The museums themselves are increasingly interested in showing glass. In fact, the AACG helped support the development of a book that showed how the leading museums that have exhibits of glass. And every time we can get someone into a museum to see the glass, it's amazing how surprised they are. They thought of glass as something they hold up and drink from, but they are flabbergasted about the size and the beauty and the stories of these works of glass. I also think that a lot of effort should be made to get more people to attend SOFA each year, if they have any interest in the art world, and particularly in the functional things that can be collected. Because at SOFA, which is once a year in Chicago, and SOFA stands for Sculptural Objects and Functional Activities, I believe, something like that. But there are usually a dozen or more galleries of ours with wonderful displays, and by just attending, you get sort of caught up. Why aren't I a collector? It's so beautiful. So if you take each area, galleries, museums, sofa show, and so on, all of them can be a basis for generating some interest in collecting glass and the glass movement.
So you see an opportunity for AACG to do more in terms of just getting people into sofa and being exposed to it. Is that what you're thinking is the first
Oh,
step?
yes, yes. It's probably led to new collectors in some number walking. In fact, the complaint of non-collectors of glass has been that they're dedicating so much of sofa to glass as opposed to wood, as opposed to fabrics. But there's nothing plotted like that. It's just that the high interest is very high in glass. Now, as far as communicating more, you would really want messages to go. Don't want a program of messages to go to people who are not collectors of anything, or who are not or who are really fundamentally interested in wood or fabrics or some other material. We simply want to know who has a potential or actual interest in glass, and then we would know how to produce some wonderful stories that they may find interesting. In the field of marketing, there's a thing called content management. It's a little different than sales message management. Sales message management is when you send something out with the final line being, now you can buy this object. They're sales messages. Content messages are extracts of interest to people who you happen to know are interested in the field. Let's say, take the person who's a lover of sports, of football, and I have a friend who loves football. I might see a beautiful article, knowing it would be something he probably missed, and I'd send it to him. So that kind of act of passing on not sales messages, but content that is with glass alluded to or discussed, is something all of us who are into glass might think of doing for our friends. In fact, most of us know of friends that are not going to be have interest in what we're doing, but we also know of friends who often ask, how's your glass collecting doing? That's an opportunity maybe to make it clear to them that glass is something that's affordable to anyone. Some nice glass is available, and to maybe message more friends who have a potential interest about, look, it's not something that is going to be so formidable and expensive. It's something that you would delight, and you can join the AACG too as part of meeting other people.
That's a nice segue, I think, into our second question, which is really a better way to assure an increase in membership. And it sounds like you would start with those people who are already show an interest in art or have an interest and are open to seeing more glass or experiencing glass.
Mm-hmm. Well, the question is, what are the benefits of membership that we could present to those who potentially might be interested? We have to talk about the fact that they could use their initial interest, by the way, in going to sites showing the homes of collectors. We've been doing this for years. We have on record so many homes that people can visit and see how glass looks in a home, and so on. So I think that that would be one benefit. Another benefit of joining, of becoming a member, is to hear about announcements around the world of interesting sales of modern glass, maybe stories of the great artists who they sometimes see, but they don't even know the names of. I think Chihuly is a very messageable story. I mean, there's a very good and exciting story about Chihuly, who is in probably more museums in the world than any other living artist now. In fact, many people who aren't glass collectors have seen hanging from the ceiling of their museum beautiful, beautiful glass. So we could tell them that members will always be informed of glass events around the world and glass personalities. People who are, let's just take even paperweights and the story. A lot of people, by the way, start their glass collection, start collecting because of paperweights. They reach a point where they look at them and they love them. They buy more, and then they say, I'd like a bigger piece because I've seen some wonderful things. So they one of the things researchers would do is figure out by interviewing a number of well-established glass collectors, how did you get started? And I will probably have a list of interesting starting points that we fail to know about, but could be ways to message around those kinds of events that take place with people.
That's interesting. How did you get started?
My wife, Nancy, is a lawyer, and she in the law practice was a lawyer who had in his office, next to her office, beautiful pieces of fine contemporary glass. And he invited us both to have dinner at his home, where we saw so many more pieces. And then when we went to a gallery not far from Chicago, more in Wisconsin, we stumbled on the kind of glass that he must have been collecting and where he may have bought even some. In fact, we mentioned his name and they said they remember selling glass to him. So now was the first time we weren't going to be thinking of buying a piece of his glass. I mean, that's his glass. But it was falling into a gallery that happened to have a number of things, including glass. And we bought our first piece. Our first piece was the famous type of bags. It's two bags. It's a big bag with bags inside.
Littleton and Vogel. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. It's a Littleton Vogel piece, and that seemed incredible. How do you blow inside of a big structure another piece of glass like that? So people could give accounts of how they got started, and some of that information might provide clues to how others might be started in glass.
That's interesting. One of the ideas from the last teleconference we had was to extend the professional scholarly research in glass. The North Carolina studio glass movement was just basically researched and then some oral histories done, some of those kinds of things. So does that seem like something that might be of interest to people as well?
Well, I think it would convert some casual members or non-members into being more and more interested in glass. We're not talking about the history of glass making, which itself is fascinating. We're talking about contemporary glass.
Yes, contemporary.
And as such, we probably will find some research going on here and there, but it's not organized. And in areas where I have also collected, particularly Japanese art and so on, I find that I love the magazine that such a group puts out, full of stories that are research-based stories about that thing I collect. So what do we have? Are we talking about a magazine that will feature articles, research-based articles on contemporary glass makers and glass pieces? Where would it be put? and made available to members?
Well, right now we're talking about working with museums. Corning is very interested in some of these oral histories. Actually, I think they've already agreed on the oral histories. But I, in
We
terms of
don't have a journal. We don't have a journal of contemporary glass, do we?
the best thing we have is our newsletter that we do on a quarterly basis, and that format we could look at changing and having a regular story in there about how someone started to collect glass, or what interested them in the first in the first time, or have some information with an artist perhaps who feature an artist to talk about the artist. We do feature artists on the website, but I don't believe that we featured them in our newsletter.
Well, let's think about that. Here's what comes to mind. The Corning people would be in the best position to launch a series of studies on contemporary glass and its history and its dynamics. And we would depend on them if they went ahead and did that. And that means just one of the researchers in Corning concentrating on contemporary glass, maybe working with the British because they're doing some work here. And then we would use our own newsletter to extract the story as a good story emerges.
That sounds interesting. I'm going to go back, though, to the basics. If we were, and we sort of are, although we've been in existence now for 31 years, and actually done a really good job, I think, from my perspective of educating people, showcasing glass art, helping people develop artists and appreciate it. It seems like we've pretty much done a good job of that. But if we were going to say, okay, this is a marketing project, what are the basics we would have to do first before we know what we're going to say and who we're going to reach out to?
First of all, you're talking about a problem facing any organization, and that is membership size. How do you grow the membership? Well, how do you grow and satisfy the membership? As a matter of fact, if you just grow and don't satisfy the membership, you will not get very far. The fact is that this means what is the potential market size for people who might be eventually joining AACG? It's not very large. People are busy with so many things, and it's not easy to identify the characteristics of a person who potentially may first buy a piece of glass, secondly, want to join an association of other collectors of glass. So it's not like a food product where we could figure out who's going to go for McDonald's hamburgers and so on and so forth. That's why I started by saying we have to work with those who meet glass collectors and bring friends in, and that would be galleries particularly. They could be, the question I'm raising is, have we done a good job in getting the galleries themselves to be growth oriented? Now remember, any gallery wants to grow, but we don't really know much about. Maybe we could do more in cooperation with them to help them grow the number of people who might visit them and to help the association grow. We should look for more ideas with our galleries.
That is a very good idea, one that has come up a couple of times. So I think that's in the pipeline to do that. We've got some questions or messages, I guess, in our chat. I'm not sure if you can see these because it looks like for some reason they're coming to me privately. But let me just ask this for you. How can we best use donations to major galleries like Ringling, Henry Ford, as a means to improve our relationships with them, and also market to potential people who attend the openings?
Well, I'm not sure that money is the issue of getting a museum to pay more attention to glass. It can be done very much by enthusiastic members of the museum who happen to be glass collectors. One of the things that a museum could think of doing is organizing a glass collector group. Now, it turns out that museums organize an Asian collector group, a this, that, a postmodern group, whatever. So the first start with a museum in your area that doesn't have much, that has maybe an initial beginning of some glass, is to see if the head of the museum or someone in one of the parts of the museum would like to organize a glass exhibit, by the way. Even if the museum has never collected any glass, why wouldn't it make sense for a glass collector to say, maybe your museum, which always has one show or another in time, would do a glass show? And the person may say, I not only have a good collection, but I have friends who will donate to that glass show. And I bet many more museums, without being stuck with actually creating a room dedicated to glass, can advertise that they're showing a glass show started really by an enthusiastic person or group in glass that convinced them to do that.
I've got another question here. Are we attracting people who like glass art and are generally involved in philanthropic activities? Are we doing a good job in promoting the grants that we give out?
Those are two different questions. On the second one, the grants are, maybe more publicity should be given to the grants by the recipients, as well as our own organization. I don't know if there are blurbs in the newspapers or magazines about how a certain museum has been supported by AACG in its glass work. So someone heading a committee might find out more about looking into that question. That was the person's second question. What was the first one, by the way?
The first one was, are we attracting people who like glass art and are generally involved in philanthropic activities?
Well, and so there's two parts to that even. Yes, we're attracting people who love glass. Whether they're also philanthropically disposed is another question, but I think that we want both types anyways. We would like, whether or not a person is going to be generously giving money to either AACG or good causes in general, it's, I think, not going to stop us from wanting the person who loves glass to be part of us.
That's sort of the key, huh?
Yeah.
And the basic here. The other question here has to do with existing glass artists. You know, we do have some glass artists as members. And can those existing glass artists help bring in collectors? That's the question.
Yes, I never thought of asking our artists about new people who have come into collecting their work. I thought usually it's the gallery that finds the person buying the work of a particular artist. Most artists probably could not list the people who own their glass, but there's nothing to stop an artist who meets someone to try. Look, it's in their interest to interest them in buying the glass of that artist. How would we come into that? Are we going to say to artists, by the way, tell us who's new in buying glass. We'd like to know more about them because if he gives us the name, he would like to sort of keep the person for himself possibly, or herself. And here we're saying, give us the person's name so they could buy from others glass. I don't
Instead of
know.
just you. Although we have an artist, Debbie Tarsitano's on the call, and she's just did a shout out that she gives out the AACG name to people who buy her art and encourages them to join. So thank you
Well, I know
for
Debbie.
that.
I mean, I know of her. I have a few of her paperweights. She's very good. And that's a nice gesture on her part. It doesn't hurt us to ask the artists to think more about what we could do to get more AACG members. Absolutely. I bet we never asked them systematically to maybe like a little questionnaire that may be sent out to the artists about the wish to grow for their sake as well as ours, the AACG's presence. And any ideas on that we ask for.
I think that's a great idea. So you've come up with us querying the galleries about how we can do a better job with them, and querying the artists as to how we could better work together with them.
Yeah.
So what about educational institutions and museums?
Museums, first of all, our big objective would be to get glass collections into museums that don't have any collection. And I've had experience trying to get my collection initially into the Art Institute of Chicago, and this is what frequently happens. The head of the museum will say, you know, it could be a good thing for our museum to have a collection of glass. However, I don't want to override the curators. And so I would be told, so I would ask, what curator would be the one for me to personally approach to get that person interested in glass? And they would say, well, probably our decorative arts curator. Sometimes they would say some other thing. What they're doing is they're avoiding making the decision because that's going to be finding a room for the glass and other things by wanting to see if there's someone passionate in their curatorial group that would undertake this. In my own experience, I couldn't make any headway with my own Art Institute of Chicago. The guy didn't know glass, the one who was probably the one who should have been bringing it in, and cared more for the things he was trained to know about. So there are dead ends in some museums, but for those those museums that have glass now, we should visit them. The person who manages that room or set of rooms and displays, and maybe the most effective thing is for 3 or 4 glass collectors in that city to ask for a meeting with that person and show that person the opportunities that lie ahead in collections that are moving eventually into museums, if not into sale. That's an alternative, but that museums have the chance to get wonderful pieces of glass. And if they shut their door to this opportunity, then maybe it's going to be Christie's and what is the other one, Sotheby's, that will end up getting the glass.
I have another question. You talked about benefits of AACG. The question is, can you think of other benefits that we as an organization should try to develop?
Well, you know, we have tours, 1 or 2 or 3 a year, maybe, Montreal, maybe to San Francisco. So joining AACG is an opportunity to quickly meet 20 or 30 other people who are passionate about glass and see maybe 6 to 10 homes of collectors of glass. So I think that's a real benefit. In the past, it seems like most of the people joining these tours were the classic long-term collectors.
Hmm.
But it's a great opportunity for the new collector. I would say any new collector that wants to learn fast about glass goes on a trip like that. That's a benefit.
It sounds like you've been on several of those trips.
Yes, I have. Then should there be more meetings centered on glass? Uh, a talk on glass, for example. We arranged a very good speaker on glass to come to where we are currently based in Sarasota, and to our museum, and he attracted an audience of about 250 people in our auditorium
Wow.
to, to talk about what's happening in the world of glass. Now, a setting for that could be any museum. You know, museums are always ready to have programs on different subjects, and maybe a local glass collecting group can approach their museum and say, we have a wonderful speaker who has enthused people about this form of art, shows beautiful pictures, you know, on slides, and explains the dramas that are going on in that world. So let's have more meetings centered on presentations, slide presentations on glass. Now, should we do that in colleges? Certainly in art departments and for students majoring in art, it would be a shame if we had no program to bring an interest to them in what's happening in the contemporary glass art movement. So maybe members now should think of the college in their area and say they could talk to one of the art instructors and say to the art instructor, I have a wonderful presentation on glass. Would you like to show the young students who are deciding on their major in glass making? Maybe they want to be a painter, but whatever, would you like to talk? So more of us should be not shy about talking. And it's not that hard to, even if you're not an established speaker on any topic, the enthusiasm you probably have as a collector and the beautiful slides you could show would make a nice 1 hour of presentation and discussion.
Let's see, another question here. Is there any effort to involve educational institutions such as university art programs or MFA programs to experience glass collections through having students and professors touring collectors' homes or collections in museums? I can speak for Louisville, where we lived until a year ago, and the program at the University of Louisville did regularly bring their students and their curatorial students as well to look at our collection. So I don't know. Do you know if that's happening at other institutions, other educational institutions around the country?
I don't know if that's happening, but it's a good idea.
It is a good idea. I'm wondering about all of these, if we should, collect all of these ideas and then see which ones could we implement and how can we implement them, given the structure of our organization. We are national or international, as you said when we started this. So I'm wondering, though, is that will fulfill some of our mission, which is the development and appreciation. So it'll fill some of that, but not. But I don't know. That'll bring people in, I guess, to understanding it. But I'm not sure how that helps with our membership. Maybe it does, as those students grow and become artists and maybe collect themselves.
Yes, definitely. Well, you have been wonderful in trying to collect ideas. This is the second such session on how to build up more members for AACG and glass collectors. And I know that you're planning at the board meeting that will be in Scottsdale to really organize the information you have into maybe in a set of volunteer assignments Some people might enthusiastically take up one category or another of ideas and do more with it. So you are to be applauded for even getting us started in this area. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, I was saying I've read all of your marketing books, Dr. Kotler, but I just realized there's two more that you've written that
Well,
I
anyway,
haven't read, your latest ones. So you do endorse that idea of having a strategic planning session and actually working with the board to see what we can do better and which areas we ought to focus on.
yes, and brand new ideas might fly out, and by organizing the best efforts and ideas, I think we may make an impact. Yeah. Is there such a thing as a growth goal? If we have 600 members, we're saying that we'd be very satisfied if we grew it to 700 members, or we're not going to hit 1,000. We're hit a fantastic number. Marketing is not, it's a science in part, but not more science than we're in the areas where marketing works most of the time, industrial areas and consumer areas.
Right, right. One of the ideas that came out of the membership committee meeting was to focus on those people who are already very vested, the visionary members, people who are active, and really focusing on those people to bring in more members and to talk to people and to help us in some of these endeavors. So I don't
Sure.
think we've ever targeted before. We've got some tools, the organization does, to target. We have a good social media presence.
Mhm.
Your next to last book that I haven't read talks about getting social. Is that book about social media?
It is about the fact that marketing, old marketing, is no longer adequate. Just the 30-second commercial type of TV ad to get attention to something. And direct mail is always alive and well, of course, but that more and more we're living in a digital world, and we want to explain how to get into that world. Now, everyone probably is in the world anyways because they have an iPhone or something. But for those who want to message more effectively to target groups, it's important to know how to use Facebook and Google and Instagram and Snapchat and other tools. So the book is about practical examples on how these things work, and maybe stories of how company A or B or C did very well moving into the digital transformation that they needed to get into.
Mm-hmm. I think AACG is a little ahead of the game because we've had a fabulous, as our ex-president Harlan Fisher used to say, our award-winning website, and we do have a presence on Facebook as well as Instagram. So we've had those. I just got another question. Let me read this. It says, great brands establish emotional connections to their customers. What can AACG do to increase the emotional connections to the glass community?
Well, the person is absolutely right that buying or joining is based on more than a mental decision. It's often a emotional decision, and how AACG can, maybe even in the telling of stories of people who came into the glass world and were so moved, and it meant so much, it meant an important part of their life. And if we message those stories to both present members and possible future members, they'll get more excited that this is not just about loving a piece of glass. It's about loving a community, really, getting enjoyment out of being part of a very important group of people who are not only collect glass, but they want to share and help museums and galleries and others go further. I don't know how many people appreciate that we actually give grants running up to $5,000, maybe more sometimes or less, to organizations that themselves want to do more with glass, and they need the tipping point. They need to just get tipped into the means of doing that. So that's one of the things we all get as satisfaction from being AACG members. That I think something like, what is it, 30 or 40 organizations that want to show more glass and the pleasures of glass ask us, and we support them.
And we just had another message from Debbie, which I think is a really good one. And you've alluded to this tonight, if not just said it outright, telling more personal stories from the artist, not just how the work is made, but more information about the artist, where the artists talk about their life. And because it seems to me that I tend to like a piece more if I've met the artist and
Yes.
interfaced with them and become friends with them, then for some reason their art starts, even though it's beautiful in the beginning, it starts looking more beautiful
Right.
after a while.
Right. That makes, I think that's such an important point. Meeting artists who care to meet other, there's some artists who are really open to the collector, not because the collector means some purchases from a person, but it means then the appreciation and the excitement that this generates to work with an artist to see how he or she works. Very important. We got to do more with that.
Have I not asked you something that you thought I was going to ask you tonight? Is there anything that you feel like you would like to say that you haven't been asked or that you haven't said?
No, I think I'll go into thinking more about it, because I know I'll be with Nancy and we'll be in Scottsdale. And at that meeting, if other things come up, I'll let you know.
Good. So you are going to join us in our Scottsdale for our
Right.
meeting. That is fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so very much for your time tonight and for your wisdom, and also for your love and support of the industry. You are a role model in lots of different ways. So thank you so very, very much. And if I don't see you before then, I look forward to seeing you in Scottsdale, and happy holidays to you.
Yes, to everyone who might be connected with this little broadcast of ours, have happy holidays ahead, and let's have peace in the world and better things to come.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Kotler, and thank you everyone who joined us tonight. We are recording this, so we will post it soon. Thank you very much, and good evening.
Good evening. Take care.